I'm Kim, and welcome to Esotouric's podcast, You Can't Eat the Sunshine, for the week of March 16th, 2015. Join us this week as we talk with architect Wade Killefer, partner at Killifer Flammang, about the firm's recent renovation of the 19th century Pershing Hotel at the corner of 5th and Main. We'll also visit with Donald Spivack, former Deputy Chief of Policy and Operations for the CRA Los Angeles, about working with Wade to preserve and maintain the affordable housing stock of Skid Row. So stay tuned.
You can't eat the sunshine, but you can make a beeline for the best of the coastline. La 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 la. Skid Row, Salon, Canyon, the Doria, and Pico Union, the long-lost neighborhood called Hermina, between South Pass and Highland Park, Grand Central Park. It is divine. You can't eat the sunshine, but it's a gold mine of fabulous oddities like Bruges, Harris, Angela, Savvy, Bob's Big Boy, in Downey Forest Lawn Cemetery. You can't eat the sunshine, but make a beeline for la la la. You can't eat the sunshine.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for listening to our podcast, You Can't Eat the Sunshine, for the week of March 16th, 2015. This week, our guest will be Wade Killefer. Wade is a principal partner at Killifer Flammang, he and his wife, Barbara. They, everything you know about loft, about adaptive reuse in downtown is one of their buildings. Okay, not everything, 100%, but like 8 out of 10. We'll talk to Wade about his most recent work downtown for SRO Housing Trust, which is the Pershing Hotel, and we'll get into their adaptation, their remodel for that, which was very involved. And our second guest will be Donald Spivack. Donald Spivack is former Deputy Chief of Operations and Policy for the Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles. Donald and Wade go back a long, long time. Senator Apartments and the Crescent Arms were two early and important conversions to save affordable housing stock in Skid Row. And Donald's going to do two things. He's going to, first of all, give an overview of the history of Skid Row and the affordable housing crisis that, as a side effect of an unforeseen policy decision in the 1970s, which required the CRA to go in and create nonprofit housing trusts to save affordable housing stock in Skid Row. And that goal was met with the objective to hire Wade to restore projects like the Senator and the Crescent Arms and eventually the Genesis. And we're just going so we're going to go from a very high view of affordable housing on Skid Row to a very specific view with Donald of his work with Wade and the early projects he and Wade did. So it's nothing but downtown. So Kim, thank you for being here as always. I know you're my wife. I know that's 7 full-time jobs, and your 8th full-time job is being the Pishka Maven.
It's so true. The Pishka is the digital tip jar. It's associated with this podcast, and it's entirely at your discretion, dear listener. But if you like what we do, in 101 episodes, we're kind of going strong. No advertising, but we would love to have your support. So if you're so inclined, you can go to the podcast page and make a tip in the form of a digital transaction. We are always so grateful for your support. It helps fund gasoline, good nature, chili rano burritos, and so forth on our trips around the Southland to find wonderful people to talk to for you to listen to. Never obligatory. Always appreciated. Thanks for your support.
Great. Okay, Kim. Perfect. So let's just move into the closely watched train section of our podcast. We'll start. Okay, Broadway is on my mind as always. We're just going to call out the Boomeiler building. This is a beautiful Beaux-Arts 8 or 9 story building on Broadway. It's between 3rd and 4th. It's on the east side of the street. It's got this wonderful dark green terracotta. It's one of these great I'm going to use the term loft, not in the sense of a rental unit or a condo unit, as most people associate lofts, but loft as in the building just consists of entire stories of the building just wide open, because the building was built for ground floor retail, and then upstairs there was storage and offices, and this is the type of building. Kim, just let the cats be. It's okay.
They're fighting.
That's fine, Kim. The cats are fighting. That's great.
Okay.
Okay. Don't worry about it.
I'm just concerned about
I need
them.
you to focus on me.
All right.
Okay.
I'm right here. They stop
So
fighting.
the Boomeiler building is opening up. I think that buildings like the Boomeiler, and there are 5 or 6 from 5th up through 3rd that are opening up like this, similar ilk, and I just think it's really great. I know, Kim, that the rental price is around $3 a square foot, which seems a bit dear for 3rd and Broadway, but I'm going to let you ruminate on that, and I'm just excited these buildings are being reactivated, because that's what has to happen on Broadway.
Oh, no, it's fantastic. It's a beautiful building. You may not have ever noticed it just because it's a rather modest building, but when you stand on the other side of the street, as we have so many times, and just try to look at every building as a single standalone, you'll find it's a very striking thing. And it was, single floors straight across. It's been split up now into a number of individual units. As Richard said, they're outrageously priced. I mean, that's kind of a scuzzy part of Broadway. I'm sorry. I'd like to see it come back.
It is.
It will. But, you want to get good tenants in, and you want to be reasonable. The units are not huge. The kitchens are very utilitarian. Just let people move into your goddamn apartment and don't be so precious about it. And we'll get some street life on Broadway, and we'll get fewer strong-arm robberies at the Famima, and more good things coming. I'm just reminded of that awful building down by the Ross, where the beautiful marble and gold facade was covered with brown stucco, and the developer was charging similarly outrageous prices and couldn't fill the building. I think a little less greed and a little more sensitivity to the beauty of these structures, and also the importance of building a community downtown that can actually live and work in these groovy spaces would go a long way.
Thank you, Kim. Finish that sip of tea, because you get to talk about Tom Gilmore and his vision.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I come out of the fine art world, master's degree in art history, a lot of museum curation work. I helped put together the extraordinary performance art show at MoCA, which some of you may have seen in the mid-90s. And I don't get it. I don't understand how it is that Tom Gilmore, a developer who really got lucky in the early days of adaptive reuse, got a lot of funding from external sources, was able
and hired Wade,
and got a lot of help from the CRA, paying off tax liens so that buildings could be obtained, is suddenly letting go of all of his restaurant holdings, but at the same time supposedly building what seems to be an alternative version of MoCA and or the Broad, a contemporary art museum at the corner of 4th and Main to encompass the interiors, the non-residential and part of the parking lot interiors of 3 buildings at that corner, 2 of which are historic cultural landmarks, the Farmers and Merchants Bank and the Hellman Building, for this thing that's going to hang off the side of the building, according to the renderings, as some sort of giant metal space squid designed by architect Tom Wiscombe. And it's meant to be an exhibition space for contemporary downtown Los Angeles art.
Yay, Art Walk.
Yeah. My belief about this, in the first place, 2 historic cultural landmarks, one of which, the Farmers and Merchants Bank, still has important interior features in the basement, which I'm very, very concerned about, because they're talking about punching through walls and turning 3 separate buildings into one in some capacity. That's very distressing, and I really hope the Office of Historic Resources is going to keep a close eye on this proposal. I don't know where the funding is coming from. I don't really know where the endowment for such a project is, unless it's going to be some sort of rental space that's going to be self-sufficient. You're laughing. And furthermore, I mean, it's an intersection that frequently stands in motion pictures as a New York intersection. Many times we'll go by the Barclay and there's a little fake subway station out in front of it. The film industry was able to get rid of those green bike lanes that the city put a great deal of time and money and brainstorming resources in, because they said this is too difficult to digitally remove, which isn't actually true. It'd be a lot harder to digitally remove the space squid. But honestly, I think that this is just a publicity stunt. I don't really believe that it's being built. I think that it's a way to stay in the news and stay relevant and keep an intersection that is really not terribly important in the evolving field that is downtown history, to keep it in the news and keep people talking about it. So everyone's chattering over on Curbed. My suspicion is that you are not going to see this museum opened up anytime soon.
We don't know that, and we wish Tom the best. He's an old locker mate of mine from the Los Angeles Athletic Club.
Yeah, hands off historic cultural landmarks. We don't wish anyone the best if they want to punch holes in historic cultural landmarks. Don't do that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I still wish him the best. I can just mean that as a general statement of goodwill. So Kim, we're gonna move on. We're moving on to Grand Avenue. I just want to keep this on the table occasionally. The Grand Avenue redevelopment. The county of Los Angeles owns. And I still don't understand how this happened, but right around the time of the Bunker Hill redevelopment project coming into being, the county of Los Angeles, right before World War II and right after, purchased large tracts of land, not large tracts, but tracts going from Union Station down First, and also down, and also along Grand, and so the Grand Avenue redevelopment project, it's not a redevelopment, the Grand Avenue project has been a county project for decades. Gloria Molina famously got the developer related to pay for and build Grand Park.
And now that this incredibly vicious election is over in the early stages, how about that? Gloria Molina shook down Related and got a beautiful park. That was really awesome. And I think even people who supported Jose Huizar in the election should be able to turn around and say, that was really awesome. Thanks for that park, Gloria.
Yeah, now Jose Huizar can fix Pershing Square. Grand Avenue project is important. The activation of First from Union Station along City Hall to Broadway. These are all really important avenues. Grand Avenue, First Street channels to activate between the Civic Center and the Historic Core, and there seems to be just a bit of a snafu. It looks like Related and their partner Nazarene, who's a hotelier, are about to go. Nazarian, they're about to go to court because Nazarian is pulling out of the hotel part of the Grand Avenue redevelopment. So I don't think that's going to be done this year, but we'll keep you posted.
I'm kind of disappointed that we're not going to get really sketchy, mobbed up hotels up on Grand Avenue. It would be a lot more exciting than what we are going to get.
I don't know what you mean by mobbed up hotels, but I think that's very endearing and a wonderful antiquated phrase that maps to something much more legitimate and concrete in today's words. But we are excited, and we look forward to the best for the Grand Avenue projects.
I remember the good old days when it was already hotels. Bunker Hill was full of hotels. We forget that sometimes.
So, Kim, just because the city wishes that it had the live-work environment of pre-World War II Bunker Hill doesn't mean that they're going to get it just because they wish they hadn't have torn it down and ruined it. So we're gonna move on. Kim, we're gonna a couple weeks ago we interviewed George Red Fox, president of the Downey Conservancy, about the Taco Bell, and I hope the hashtag Save Taco Bell and that podcast did some good because you sent me a link. There's an article in the Huffington Post that Taco Bell Corporate is doing a feasibility study to preserve and move the original Taco Bell. So this is good. It's a nice article. Just very quickly, because we need to keep moving, but just it looks like it's looking positive. They're in touch with the owners. They're like, just give us, just please give us a couple months. We want to figure this out, and they're figuring it out.
Boy, if everything went like this, we wouldn't have a podcast. I call it preservation without tears. Everyone involved wants it to work.
Yeah.
There's money on the table.
Yeah.
There's the entities needed to physically move the building, to figure out where it should be. Everybody's in place, and it's just a matter of time. Now, what's going to happen to this vintage Taco Bell? That's what gets really interesting. Wouldn't it be incredibly cool to open up a Taco Bell
with a 20-foot tall Rainer Banham standing in front of it?
Oh my goodness, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, sure, yeah, let's have a Rainer Banham statue. No, what if they made a Taco Bell and actually went back to the vintage recipes? I mean, that would be a dining destination. So just putting that out there. What if it was an old school Taco Bell? None of the new stuff, just the real Taco Bell.
I have this funny feeling. I've already sent George an email. I have this funny feeling. I think you're going to be part of the feedback loop with corporate. That whatever feedback loop Downey Conservancy has, I think you might get to explicitly be part of that.
That is so sweet. I'm a vegetarian. I can't eat there. I'll have the cinnamon crispas. No, those came in the 70s.
Okay, Kim. It's okay. It's okay. It's moving forward. It's good.
It's exciting. Thank you.
Kim, your Hollywood tour launches in 2 weeks. 3?
Yeah, something like that.
3 weeks? Two. Oh my God! It launches in 2 weeks. Kim,
I'm almost done.
We've got to put the slideshow. Got the Caesar and I just drove the bus route.
Sure, it's a good route.
It's a strong route.
It's full of murder.
It's okay. Greatest thing in the world is that our bus driver and I can drive the route in our car, and our bus and Caesar can say things like, "Yeah, I can't make a left turn there, but I can make a left turn there," and I make a so Sunset Boulevard and Crescent Heights. That boundary between West Hollywood and Los Angeles is a little complicated over there, but that corner, that lot, is the city of Los Angeles.
It sure
it's the
is.
southwest corner, and it's now the bank, and it used to be the former Garden of Allah, the original development by Alla Nazimova, which became a residency hotel with a bunch of bungalows. Chateau Marmont is across the street. All that's Chateau Marmont's still there.
Garden of Allah be gone. It's so uptight now.
Yeah, it's true, Kim. The Chateau Marmont might as well not exist, as far as I'm concerned. You can't even okay. I used to. You know what? Okay, we're not together.
Frank, no, but it's true. I mean, that was a place you could walk into and feel like a human being. Now they look at you down their little noses and say, "What are you doing here?"
Okay, Kim. So Frank Gehry has been commissioned to design a retail residential development at the southwest corner of Crescent Heights and Sunset, the former location of the Garden of Allah, now currently a mid-century modern bank, and that's kind of interesting.
I'm flabbergasted because this project has been on the table for quite a while with some really ghastly renderings. The community was up in arms because they already were when they saw the first renderings, because they were looking at the parking plan and the entrance exit plans, and they knew that it was going to create massive gridlock. And I guess the developers just decided that their PR was so bad they were going to have to go and pony up for, boy, talk about a marquee architect. I mean, worldwide, there's probably few who are less expensive than Frank Gehry, but he's a hometown boy, and we haven't seen anything about what he has planned, but I guess they're hoping that the community will perhaps be a little more amenable to something that will raise their property values through its architectural significance. I don't know. This is going to be super interesting, and although we don't know what Gehry has planned, there was some mention of honoring the history of the site in the design. So that'll be interesting because it's not just Garden of Allah at this point. You're also talking about, well, the bank itself has some fans. I mean, it's a nice mid-century modern bank with a beautiful multicolored glass panel that you can still see, and an interesting sculptural feature. And also, you had the Pandora's box there on that kind of interesting triangle. Well, I mean, the traffic island used to be much bigger before the street was widened, and that was a centerpiece of teenage culture in the 1960s. It's the flashpoint for the famous riot on Sunset Strip when the sheriff's department...
even though that is Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles.
Well, it is the city of Los Angeles, but it's the gateway to the Strip, which is run by the sheriffs, and when they implemented a teenage... Curfew, thank you. A word I don't like. I couldn't even think about it. When they implemented a teenage curfew at the direction of the businessmen's organization further west in the Strip, it resulted in this really incredible moment where the kids of Los Angeles and some of the rock and roll stars came out and marched for the right to simply have public space amenable and agreeable to them when their parents didn't mind them being out. It's a really interesting moment. And although people always say Joni Mitchell's song about paving paradise was written about that intersection, that was written about Waikiki, for what it's worth, was written about that intersection. So I wonder what among this incredible layer of history and Schwab's across the street Geary might be drawing on. It doesn't really seem like a Geary sort of thing to do. Maybe it'll be in the interior decorative elements.
Kim, that project is just going to be stupid. Okay, and that's just why we talked about it. So thanks, and thanks for trying to have some goodwill to Frank Geary. Okay, God bless you. So Kim,
you're reading a lot into it. I just, I think it's super interesting. This is a very powerful corner. It means a lot, and we're going there on our Hollywood tour, not to talk about Frank Geary.
Okay, Kim, we're moving on. We're done with Closely Watched Trains, upcoming events. Nathan Marsack, Lava Visionary of the year 2015, has his Richardsonian Roman-esque talk. That is Sunday, March 29. Our Lava Sunday salons are back, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., Library Bar, 6th and Hope. Sign up, register.
Required?
Required, exactly.
Free, but you got to RSVP?
The Sunday salons are back. They're free. They're a lot of fun. You've got to RSVP. So there you go. Next, that's this month. Next month, April 26th. Sunday, April 26th is Joan Job Smith's Lava Sunday Salon. She is my hero. I love Joan Job Smith. She is going to talk about her memoir, Tales of an Ancient Go-Go Girl. She's going to talk about her mentorship both ways, mentoring and being mentored by Charles Bukowski in the 1970s, and reading a bunch of poems about Orange County biker gangs. And she's the best. So we're really, really looking forward to that. Kim, we're going to just, I know there are no more events, so we're just going to jump into this. We're going to jump into our interviews, okay? I'm going to interview Donald second, so I'm going to introduce Donald first. Okay, Donald Spivack, a regular on this series. Very dear man, one of our favorite people in the world. Donald, as many of you know, is former Deputy Chief of Policy and Operations for the Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles. He, in the 1990s, worked on a number of projects with Wade, who was our first interview subject. They worked on the Senator and the Crescent Arms. Let me get that. Yep.
Whoa.
There we go. Yep, Senator and the Crescent Arms. So what's interesting, so there are several tie-ins between Donald and Wade. One of them, and I'll just talk about them as they come into my mind, not necessarily in terms of precedence or significance. One of the tie-ins is that the Senator is a very similar project to the Pershing Hotel, which is the subject of our interview with Wade, the first interview for this podcast. The Senator was a project they worked on together, rehabilitating a low-income residency hotel on Skid Row. It's 9th and Main. The Senator, basically they decided that for the sake of effective ownership of the street for the community, they needed to preserve the facade because it's a beautiful facade, and they needed basically just to build a modern structure in back of this Beaux-Arts facade. So that's what they did. And the Pershing Hotel, which we'll talk to Wade about in the first interview, is the exact same model. So they also worked on Crescent Arms is another important SRO housing trust project they worked on together. And Donald will get into all of this. So I'll leave Donald to talk about what he wants to talk about. And I just wanted to make, that's what I do in the introductions, is just make the connections.
And you'll have some photos people can look at that'll be on the podcast page, yes?
We'll have some photos of the Senator. Yeah,
and we've got some great photos from the Pershing.
Yeah, we'll put up a photo set. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah. I just think it's worth mentioning because some people may be listening and they're not thinking about the podcast page. But if you want to know what these buildings look like, go to the podcast page.
Right. Okay. So good. That's Donald's our second interview. Our first interview, which we'll segue into once I set this up properly, is with Wade. Wade is a principal at Killifer Flammang. That's he and his wife, Barbara, and you name it, they've fixed it. downtown. Let me get out my notes here because it is pretty exhaustive, and I want to get it right because I don't want Wade to furrow his brow as he's listening to this on his drive to work or on his way home on Wednesday night. Wade. So back to Donald Spivack, right? Because these two are intrinsically so. Back in the late 1990s. The CRA building was in the Banco Popular, the other Hellman brother, the younger, the Hellman building across. Herbert, is it Herbert?
Baby brother.
The baby brother Hellman building across the street, Banco Popular. They're in those offices right across. Okay, Herman Hellman, yes. Mm-hmm. Baby brother of Isaiah's. They're in the Herman Hellman building, Banco Popular is the blade sign. They're right across from the Continental Farmers and Merchants Bank. Tom Gilmore walks in. Okay, maybe he doesn't walk into Donald Spivack's office, but in the late 1990s,
he flies in.
There are a series of meetings. Gilmore and Associates has a line on some funding at the federal level for historic preservation of buildings, reuse of buildings, old buildings. The CRA is sitting across from an almost entire block from 4th to 5th Spring to Main of unused early 20th century, late 19th century business buildings that they don't know what to do with. And it's right across in their offices. And they really want to start getting some traction on redevelopment in a way which has nothing to do with the Bunker Hill redevelop in a way which is empathic and fosters community.
Doesn't punch holes in buildings. Goodwill.
New paradigm. So Donald Spivack pays off the tax lien on the Continental building. This allows the...
No, wait, I thought the lien was on the Farmers and Merchants.
No, the lien is on the Continental.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. The lien was on the Continental. Donald cleared this lien. By clearing this lien, they were able to begin to talk to the people in charge of this federal funding that said, okay, so the properties are free and clear. Okay, that's good. We like that. And we also like the fact that the city has put a stake in it by paying off this tax lien. So let's go ahead and let's put this federal funding in place. And the old bank district was born, and that was the last of that federal money, which I think is very interesting. So the old bank district consisted in totality of the Rowan building, which Wade did not work on, the old bank district redevelopment, which Wade did work on then in 1999, 2000. The Continental building, the Hellman building, which is the building that surrounds the Farmers and Merchants Bank, the slate-built colored building, and across the street from 4th and Main, the San Fernando building. Okay, and Wade worked on that, and that was the first project to go through with the adaptive reuse ordinance for downtown. So this is a watershed project.
It was just so interesting to think that was just a decision made in part because of where the CRA's offices were. And it could have been so different. I mean, they could have picked 4 other buildings. They could have picked a different intersection. It wouldn't have necessarily been in the heart of the historic Skid Row. If it had been on Broadway, maybe things would have spread outward over time. I mean, those are different possible histories that we'll just have to speculate on. Someday someone will write a great science fiction story about adaptive reuse in Los Angeles. Not me.
All right, so just to wrap up this thread, so that's how Wade got started. He a couple years later was on the mayor's board to refine the adaptive reuse ordinance. So he's been involved not only in rehabilitating buildings per the adaptive reuse ordinance, but he's involved in the feedback loop because he has a lot of experience. Very quickly, just to take a snapshot from about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were working on over a dozen downtown loft developments and 6 low-income developments for Skid Row housing. So 10 years ago, when downtown was really 10 years, 20 years of work was starting to coalesce, Wade was there. So he's a very important person in terms of the actual physical rehabilitation of downtown, everything we talk about. So we're super excited that he met us on the rooftop of the Pershing Hotel.
And boy, that's a beautiful spot.
So Kim, you are now, before we go, as a way of introducing our interview with Wade, I want you to explain to us what the Pershing Hotel is. Very quickly.
Very quickly. Well, if you've ever gone down Main Street, especially on our bus, we've definitely pointed out to you this beautiful, circa 1888, bay-windowed San Francisco-style two-story structure there on the corner of Fifth and Main. Oriole is the word. I never use that word. But it's a gorgeous building. It's storefront below, hotels above. Over the years, it was stitched together. Several different buildings became
Charnock
the
Walk.
Charnock Block.
Hotel Roma.
Well, originally it was the Charnock Block. Then it became the Pershing Hotel. The Hotel Roma was attached. They all got holes punched through them. Hey, holes punched through them in the old days. And this multi-level building with floors that weren't actually at the same place, same level on the adjacent buildings, became a single hotel that was adapted for low-income housing, and the decision was made to fix it up further, and that's when it got a facadectomy. And if you've been up and down Main Street in the last couple of years, you've seen this gorgeous facade held up by these massive pillars of steel. It's been an extraordinary thing. You were able to peek inside and see straight across the expanse, and you can't anymore, because now inside is a brand new structure with, about 80 units?
Yeah.
Yeah, and mostly for people who are newly off the streets, which is an extraordinary thing. There's a lot of social service aid available within the building. The storefronts are going to be developed. It's unclear how. There's probably going to be some community space, beautiful garden space on the rooftop with extraordinary views of the twin Rosslyn hotels and City Hall up the way, and then this terrific light well in the center where they're doing plantings. It's a great place to get off the street, and we're so happy this building survives.
We are. And so let's take it away with our interview with Wade. Wade, I'm here with you. We're on the rooftop of the Pershing Hotel at 5th and Main, and I want you to properly introduce yourself and tell us your role in this beautifully renovated late 19th century structure.
My name is Wade Killefer. I'm principal at Killifer Flammang Architects. We were the architects for the reconstruction of this fantastic building, the Pershing Hotel, and we're really delighted with how well it came out. It's a great palette to start with, and we had a good time trying to make it even better.
Perfect. Let's start at the beginning. Let's just give people a sense of, because it's an audio podcast, this is a late 19th century structure, originally called the Charnock Walk. Mr. Charnock built it, we think, around 1888, 1887. The building records were lost, so this is one of these great unknowns. But about then, do you want to describe the San Francisco Bay architecture that makes up this facade, just quickly?
Well, I don't know what historians have had fun trying to debate what kind of architecture there's actually here. It's sort of a Queen Anne run amok.
Yeah.
It's a brick building, and it has these very extravagant bays that pop out and hang out over the street and give it its character. It's really terrific.
It's a originally it's a 3-story structure, 4-story structure. It's complicated. It was 2 stories with a mezzanine, so it's 3 levels, but 2 stories. Okay. Let's keep working our way forward. The Charnock Walk over the decades became merged with the Hotel Roma. Do you just want to, let's just try and look at this before World War II. This was a rabbit's warren of buildings that had been connected.
Yeah, it was. It had been a pharmacy. Going back through all the historical, Owl Drugs was here for a long time. There were a lot of different uses, and then I guess after the war it was turned into a hotel. There were 2 buildings here that were combined, and then the Roma Hotel, which is to the south, was added to it, and the floors didn't line up, so it really was a rabbit's warren. There were tiny little light courts coming down where people would just dump their garbage, and it was kind of a mess. And then in 1988, the Community Redevelopment Agency realized that a lot of these old buildings were being torn down, and they supported the reconstruction and fixing these things up to be SRO hotels. So at that point, Jim Bonner, who was the architect for LA, the Los Angeles Community Design Center at the time, came in and they fixed these things up the best they could, and there were 69 apartments here for a long time. The style of rooms, in those days the hotels were very tiny rooms with little tiny bathrooms down the hall.
SSRO, single room occupancy.
Right. And so Skid Row Housing Trust, who owned it then and now owned it, they're fixing up some of their old buildings. Now all of these units are nice, spacious studios, handicapped accessory bathrooms in the rooms, kitchenettes. So it's a whole different approach to taking care of homeless folk.
Perfect. There for your reconstruction, for those of us watching, the salient aspect of your remodel was the dramatic propping up of the facade and the complete reconstruction of these two buildings, which had been joined very strangely over the years. Do you quickly want to talk about the propping up of the facade and the reorganization and the stairway, which you put back in place approximately?
Yeah, obviously the buildings are one of the real treasures of downtown Los Angeles, being probably one of the earliest things that's still standing. And so the facade was very important. We saved the corner building and the facade, and we did that by sinking huge steel beams into the sidewalk in front of the building and using that to brace the facade and keep it up during construction.
Yeah, it was very dramatic.
Huge, 24 or 36-inch steel beams.
Perfect. Get us to now. Bring us up to speed over the last 6 months. A lot of stuff has been happening. People have moved in. This is just the landscaping's coming in next week. This is just still a very exciting time for this project, still in its infancy in terms of people coming in and occupying.
Right. We need, for financing reasons, we needed to get our temporary occupancy permit in last year. So right at the last minute, we finally got all of the hurdles cleared. And now the contractor's just finishing up the little things that always lag behind. Next week we're going to crane in some giant bamboo to put down into the courtyard, and there's some large planters up on the roof. We're on the roof right now, on the fourth floor roof. There's big planters for community gardens. So the Trust does a really good job of supporting their residents and growing their own food. It's a part of their whole program.
Yeah, this is a fantastic group. Do you just on General Principle, do you want to remind me the name of the plastic stub that whole? Yeah, I'm completely obsessed with these.
There are the decking is held up. We have concrete pavers for the deck up here on the roof, and holding the pavers up are an adjustable product called Bison screw jacks, which allow you to do nice concrete pavers on top of a sloped roof.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Just to wrap this up, we're at Fifth and this is gorgeous. We're at Fifth and Main. The twin Rosslins are across the street. Go ahead. Yeah.
And next door is the new Genesis, which we also did. If you look, as we are at the Roslyn Hotel on the west side of the street.
The original one.
The original one, or the new Genesis on the east side of the street. And they have the same architecture, the Beaux-Arts forms of the base, the column, and the top. And so we played off of the Roslyn when we did the new Genesis. But it's fun having done work on two corners, historic corners in the city.
It's absolutely gorgeous, and as I'm looking over your shoulder, I can see the Mercantile Arcade, which is a project you worked on.
Yeah, we've done a lot of old buildings downtown, and the arcade was certainly a fun and challenging one. And it's good that now they're finally getting some good retail on the ground floor, and it's fun to see that coming back to life.
I think we did it. This is a great building. I so appreciate your time in talking to us about this.
Thank you very much.
My name is Kerstin Kansteiner. I am here in Berlin Bistro in Long Beach, and you are listening to You Can't Eat the Sunshine.
Okay, great. All right. Donald, I'm here with you. We're in the Spring Arcade, actually, and we're going to talk today. This is going to be our complement to my interview with Wade, whom you worked with extensively, and we'll get to that. We agreed we're going to get started with this interview by you explaining the birth of Skid Row as we know it, and that will let us jump into the CRA's role in stemming the loss of affordable housing in Skid Row and the creation of nonprofits. And that's sort of our arc, so let's get started with you telling us about the birth of Skid Row.
Okay, thank you. The Skid Row area began to emerge in the 1870s when the railroads first came into Los Angeles. And as a result of the railroads coming in and having a terminal here, and the fact that a lot of the activity, commercial activity, industrial activity, was seasonal, there was a need for hotels to serve passengers, to serve railroad workers, and to serve these seasonal workers. And so that began the generation of a large number of hotels that initially simply surrounded the train stations, which were at 4th and Santa Fe and 6th and Santa Fe. And then they progressed as the area grew further toward the downtown, which was half a mile away at Main Street and Spring Street. The area also began to develop at that time industrially. But because the nature of the people coming to work in Los Angeles tended to be single young males, and as a result of that, there were a lot of things like brothels and bars and so forth, the temperance movement picked up on the need to come into this area to provide the clean living alternative.
Right.
And they became the initial base of the network of missions that then were established in the area. So the network of hotels and the network of social service entities both traced to the coming of the railroads in the 1870s. By the 1930s, the area had ceased to be largely a place of commercial hotels and was starting to take on the nature of being a residential neighborhood. And this was very much exacerbated by the migration of people to Los Angeles during the Great Depression. They came to Los Angeles, which was seen as being the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, looking for a new life, a new job. And some simply lived in the railroad yards, others ultimately began to settle into the hotels. By the 1960s, there had been very little renovation or even maintenance in many of these hotels. And so the city began to be very concerned about the physical conditions. And starting in the mid-60s, approached the various owners here and said, your buildings date to the late 1800s. They don't meet seismic codes. They don't meet fire codes. You've got to upgrade the buildings to meet current codes.
And if I can interrupt you, there were fires. I mean, these it wasn't just like we think this might happen. There were a lot. They were getting a lot of fires.
Yes. And as a result of that, because the nature of a repair order gives the option to demolish, a lot of the owners, looking at the cost structure of the buildings, looking at how much a renovation might cost, and looking at the rents they were getting, said, it's not worth it to me, I'm going to simply demolish the buildings. So from the early to mid-60s until the mid-70s, roughly half the housing stock was eliminated by owners demolishing, and that's when the city really took notice. In 1975, the redevelopment plan for the downtown was adopted, and as part of the redevelopment plan, which incorporated virtually all of downtown Los Angeles, including the Skid Row and industrial districts, the city made the decision that rather than what was going on in almost every other city in the country where Skid Rows were simply being cleared, there would be positive action to retain the remaining housing stock, to try to stabilize it, and to create a sound neighborhood that would serve very low-income individuals, people who are at or beyond the last resort of housing. And so CRA was charged with carrying out that program that included finding a way to acquire, rehabilitate, and run the hotels.
Right.
To do that, initially the CRA began taking funding to buy the hotels, and to start promoting the renovation of the hotels at that time at a very low level, just bringing them up to seismic and fire code, and created a nonprofit, the SRO Housing Corporation, Single Room Occupancy Housing Corporation, specifically to do that on behalf of the CRA. And I'm
going to interrupt you because this is really important. So the CRA goes ahead and creates a non-profit model to stem the loss of affordable housing in Skid Row in the mid-1970s.
On its own, to stem the loss, the nonprofit was the mechanism to run the hotels once they were retained.
Right, okay.
So the concept was CRA will pay to acquire, CRA will pay to rehabilitate, CRA will not operate. CRA needs an entity to operate, and thus created the SRO Housing Corporation to be that entity on its behalf. Subsequent to that, two religious institutions got together and created an entity called Church and Temple Housing Corporation. And that ultimately evolved into the Skid Row Housing Trust, which is the second large nonprofit that's undertaking the acquisition and rehabilitation and operation of hotels, also using the CRA model of funding for acquisition and rehabilitation. And from that time forward, the earlier 80s up until right now, the last of the CRA-funded projects are underway. About a little over 60% of the total housing stock has been taken over in that mechanism. The buildings either rehabilitated or, if they were beyond rehabilitation, replaced by new construction. So roughly two-thirds of the housing stock, and the current housing stock is around 6,500 units, are under the control of one or another nonprofit entity and are under long-term covenants to preserve them as affordable housing.
Perfect. Okay, so this is where Wade comes into the picture. So you worked with Wade a number of projects. Let's start with the Senator, though. And the Senator is interesting because what happened at the Senator is what we just interviewed Wade about the Pershing Hotel. Wade did the same thing at the Pershing Hotel. Right. So let's start with the Senator, and that will just tie us straight into our interview with Wade.
Okay. The Senator Hotel, which is on South Spring Street, south of 7th Street, was an old residential hotel that was seriously in need of rehabilitation. In fact, it looked as if it was beyond the point of rehabilitation. So the plan initially was to simply demolish the hotel and build new housing on the site, which in fact was done on an adjacent property. Because the building was actually within the historic district, the decision was made that it made more sense from the integrity of the community to at least retain the facade of the building. So the facade of the building was retained on the Spring Street side. The building behind it was removed and completely replaced with new construction, affordable housing, small unit housing.
Perfect. Okay. And this is exactly what has just happened at the Pershing Hotel, which is a project Wade is just finishing up.
Right. And Wade is an expert on particularly renovation of housing and the creation of affordable housing, those two areas. And he's done a number of projects for loft conversions of commercial buildings, in addition to his affordable housing. The Pershing and the Roma are two small hotels that were architecturally very significant, and they're actually going through their second renovation.
Right, 1988 was the first renovation.
And that was a straightforward renovation. The buildings themselves were kept, the interiors were upgraded to code, and they were operated as affordable housing for several years.
And these were rehabilitated under this CRA model of acquisition and then run by a nonprofit agency.
Right. Now, the second round is that we're recognizing there is a continuing need for affordable housing. There is also more and more difficulty finding sites for housing. Yeah. So a decision was made that in this particular case, because of its location on 5th Street, which is the center of where much of the housing is located, it really made sense to create a larger pool of affordable housing. Recognizing that the buildings themselves did have historic merit, though, the decision was made similar to what was done with the Senator, to preserve the historic exteriors of the buildings and then build new affordable housing at substantially greater numbers than the units that were in the original buildings.
Right.
And that project is underway.
Right. And we saw this with Wade at the Pershing Hotel, 5th and Main. They retained the facade, put up a giant $200,000 moment frame
Right.
on the sidewalk, 16 inches thick of the facade was just suspended. And they went in and they rebuilt all new units with a beautiful courtyard, and they did it's an amazing job.
Right. And this is all part of the CRA concept, which is not only to retain affordable housing, but to expand the supply of affordable housing and create amenities in the community so that the Skid Row area, as much as possible, becomes a more stable residential community for the people living there.
Perfect. Okay. Let's take just one aside, because it's an aside that I think people will find interesting. You've done work with Wade in another scenario, the Old Bank District.
Yes.
Do you just, I know this is a bit off topic, but it's a block away, and it's a beautiful structure, and you were crucial to the Old Bank District deal.
No, I had a hand in it.
You had a hand. Do you just want to, because it is a Wade project, do you just want to tell us about the Old Bank District deal and sort of the birth of the Old Bank District, which is really important to downtown?
Sure. And Wade was involved in an analysis that predated the adoption of the Live Work Ordinance that made it possible, the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance, that made it possible to renovate easily, more easily, older buildings that had been commercial but were largely vacant. And so that resulted with Wade's participation in the adoption of the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance in 1999. Shortly thereafter, Tom Gilmore came to the Redevelopment Agency with a concept of starting a loft conversion of a number of buildings, including the buildings that were part of the Security Pacific Farmers and Merchants Bank complex at 4th and Main, an office building at the corner of 4th and Spring that historically was the last building built before the city put a height limit on office buildings that didn't come off until the 60s, and an adjacent hotel. And that entire complex was to be the first project done under the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance. When he came to us, the corner building, the high-rise Continental building, was at the point of practically being sold for failure to pay taxes.
Right.
And so CRA took the step of inserting itself, preventing the tax sale, paying off the taxes, and taking control of the building so it could be turned over to Gilmore to facilitate the balance of the project moving forward. He then sought to get primarily federal funding under a number of programs that were then available.
And which since immediately after stopped being available.
Right. Yeah. That allowed both the commercial rehabilitation of the ground floors and the residential conversion of the upper floors. Feds came to the city and said, okay, city, we're interested in this project, but we want to know the city has participated and how much have you put into this project? And we stepped up and said, well, we did the initial $300,000 to save the building to be part of this complex because of its very strategic location at the corner of 4th and Spring at the hinge of all the other buildings that were part of the complex. And on the basis of the fact that CRA had taken that first step, the federal government was willing to sign the agreements that financed the balance of the project. And that was the first, completed in 2000, I believe, the first Live Work project by conversion under the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance.
Fantastic, and that's for most people listening, that's the birth of modern downtown as we know it.
That's right. And since then, there have been about 7,500 units built through the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance and conversion of historic buildings that took buildings that were derelict, had been vacant in many cases for decades, and put them back into productive use.
Yeah. And Eastern Columbia being one of them, which another Wade project.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, we did it.
Okay.
We did it. As always, your insight is appreciated, and I know Wade's going to be happy to be on the same episode of you.
Great.
And I want to thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Pratt. I'm here as the director of Los Angeles Union Station for Property Management for Metro, and you're listening to You Can't Eat the Sunshine.
And we're done. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our podcast for the week of March 16th, 2015. Our guests this week were Wade Killefer. He is a principal at Killifer Flammang. They are architects who have worked extensively in rehabilitating and restoring historic buildings in downtown Los Angeles. And also Donald Spivack, Wade's old friend and someone he's worked with over the decades. Donald Spivack is former Deputy Director of Policy and Operations for the Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles, which is a very long way of saying there is very little about downtown Los Angeles in the last 50 years that Donald cannot speak of with authority. And I'm so happy I was able to put them together, because it's a lot. It's a great synergy. So that was our episode. I want to thank both of them for their time and attention. Wade, it was great to meet Wade finally, and Donald, of course. It's always great to have him back. It's such a pleasure. And Kim, let's without further ado, let's just we're on the home stretch here. Let's bring us up to speed with some upcoming bus tours.
Sure, we'd love to see you on the bus, and there's a bunch of fun tours coming up, sort of in a true crime vibe. We'll begin with March 21st, Pasadena Confidential with Crimebo the Clown Tour, a tour about rocket science, black sex magic, and other fun things that go on behind the high hedges of old Pasadena. We're debuting my brand new collaboration with you, Richard. It's kind of my tour, it's kind of yours. It's called Hollywood on March the 28th. Well, the true crime and the weird stuff and the old people who used to walk those streets, that's my baby. But, Richard, you're taking us into some extraordinary buildings for the walking tour portion. And that's really going to be a love letter to the place I grew up in. And I'm very excited about that tour. It's filling up. We'd love to see you on the bus. Got a week off, and then we're back again on, well, yes, we are, April the 11th. And we'll be downtown. In fact, if you want to see that Pershing Hotel for yourself, you could probably get on the Hotel Horrors and Main Street Vice tour, where we'll be going to a lot of hotels. We don't go into that hotel because that's sort of a secure building, but we will be going into some beautiful historic lobbies and talking about the old street life, the culture of vice and delight and sometimes terror along Old Main Street and Broadway. Very fun tour. On April the 18th, it's our most popular crime bus tour, the Real Black Dahlia. That is definitely filling up, as it always does. Come and walk with us in the footsteps, or ride on the bus, rather, of Elizabeth Short, the victim in what remains the most notorious unsolved murder in Los Angeles history. Learn about how William Randolph Hearst actually ran a better investigative unit than the LAPD, but it's okay because the LAPD and the newspapers work together. Gee, that'd be neat if they could do that again. Maybe not. Echo Park Book of the Dead is a new crime bus tour. This is our second excursion. It's April the 25th. Come and see the lost lore of the old streetcar suburbs. We'll go inside Sister Amy Semple McPherson's beautiful house museum, which does contain the most beautiful bathroom in Los Angeles that you can't use, but you can look at, and learn about some of the tortured, tormented, and doomed residents of neighborhoods like Elysian Heights, Angelino Heights, Echo Park, Silver Lake, what have you. On May the 2nd, we get out of the crime bus and into the lit bus. It's Charles Bukowski's Haunts of a Dirty Old Man, a tour about finding the voice within you that is great, which takes us from old Skid Row and Bunker Hill. Which is great. The voice within you, which is great, which takes you from old Bunker Hill through East Hollywood and to some really delightful zones of creation, inspiration, and inebriation. May the 9th, it's Raymond Chandler's Los Angeles, a tour which also contains Hollywood and downtown portions, and it's about Chandler as a young man, inventing himself as an Angelino, and as a mature man in Hollywood, being tortured, as all great writers were when they entered the studio system. And a little later in May, we have our once-a-year bus adventure with my compadre, David Smay, with whom I wrote several music books. It's called Tom Waits Los Angeles, Crawling Down Cahuenga, a tour of downtown and Echo Park and Hollywood locations that figure prominently in the life and creative work of the singer-songwriter Tom Waits. And that tour is always so much fun to give, and I would love to see you on the bus. Spread the word to your Tom Waits loving friends, and we'll see you there.
Kim, we did it. Okay? Mm-hmm. We got through it somehow. Another episode 101.
Woo!
So, on that note, I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to ask you to continue to listen, and I want to remind you,
you can't eat the sunshine.
You can't eat the sunshine, but you can make a beeline for the best of the coastline. La 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 la. Skid Row, Solano Canyon, the Doria, and Pico Union, the long-lost neighborhood called Hermina, between South Pass and Highland Park, Grand Central Park. It is divine. You can't eat the sunshine, but it's a gold mine.